Okay, this is part one of three. And the first part here is going to be on wrapping these Colt split boxes. Part two is going to be on making the cartridges. Part three is going to be on waxing, applying the right amount of wax so they fit correctly in the box. And so these boxes will be available in my web store. There's going to be two different versions of these boxes. There's a 3D printed version. These are more durable and can be reused many times. There's wooden ones like the originals. These are fragile and can split real easy. So I wouldn't recommend these for repeated uses. If you want something to wrap for like a display or have one open for a display or something, I would go with the wooden ones. But if you want to repeatedly make cartridges and repack them and rewrap them, I would go with the 3D printed version. Once they're wrapped, you cannot tell the difference. The 3D printed ones are slightly thinner than the wood ones because the plastic is stronger than the wood, so I can actually print them a little thinner. That's the only way I can tell. Sometimes if I don't label them, I can't even tell myself. It gets kind of difficult. Like that, like this is a printed one, and I'm pretty sure this is a wooden one. But yeah, they look almost identical to each other. So they're going to be the different types, and then I'm going to have them in 36 caliber or 44 caliber. And that'll fit a 25 grain cartridge. And I'm going to have 36 caliber. There's two 36s. One is a little bit longer for the Navy bullet, and the other one is for the Colt Cartridge Works bullet. These are all Arizona Bullet Molds bullets. So this is the 36 Colt Cartridge Works. This is the 36 Navy. This is a little bit longer, so the box has to be slightly longer to accommodate the longer bullet. And then there's the 44 caliber box, which is made for the Johnson & Dow bullet. Just for comparison here, this is the Johnson & Dow bullet. These two are Johnson & Dow bullets. This is a Colt 44 bullet cast from an original mold, and with the same dimensions as an original one, just for comparison. But unfortunately, these bullets do not work well in reproduction revolvers. The heel diameter is just too large on them to load correctly. So that's the only thing that's basically a modern mold that's available is the Johnson & Dow. So the 44 boxes are made for this bullet, and my cartridge forming kits are for this bullet also. And so the next step here is and the kits will also have so you'll get the two halves here like this. You'll get the two halves. You'll get two labels. So if you want to make these right away, you don't need a printer. You can wrap these. There's two of them. There's going to be two lengths of wire, so you can rewrap it at least twice if you want without a printer. And you'll also get a PDF file along with this, so you can print your own labels. So the 44 will print out two of them. The 36 caliber will print out four like this. And the paper that they're printed on is this paper here. So if you want to reprint your own, so you don't have to rely on me for labels or anything. So as long as you have a file, you can print your own labels. But it has to be a thin paper. And this is the brand that I used. Hugh Knight found this. It's a really nice paper. It prints well. It goes through LaserJet printers. And it's Bright Creations. You can get that on Amazon. And it prints right from the tray. Originally I used this stuff, so I had to trim it down to fit through the printer, but it has a rough surface. It's the same thickness, and you got to feed it through one at a time in your printer, and so it takes forever, and it's kind of a pain in the butt to print out multiple copies using this. But it does give you a different finish than this one. And if you notice the difference here between the two, this gives you a smoother, shinier finish. The rough surface of this one will give you more of a matte finish. It really soaks into the paper and gives you a matte finish. Whereas this stuff here will give you a kind of a smoother, shinier finish if you shellac them. So that's the difference between the two different types of paper. And there's other ways I'll show towards the end of the video here of how to wrap these. There's multiple different ways you can make these boxes. If you don't want historically correct boxes, there's other ways you can do it. So that's the different types of paper that I would recommend. And it seems, and this is also a newspaper print. So it's basically, that's the thickness you're going with. You want a newsprint paper to print these. If you use like regular 20 or 24 pound paper, they just don't wrap correctly at all. They don't wrap very well, and they'll be really hard to tear open too if the paper's too thick. And so I'm going to open one here to show how they open, because I'm sure a lot of people have never seen one of these, how they're actually opened. Nobody in their right mind would open an original one. So this is probably the closest way that you're going to get to see an original packet opened. And so the wire here is tucked into the end. So the loose end is wrapped around and tucked into the end. That was Hugh Knight's idea. It really tidies up the packet. I don't know if they originally were like that or not, but I like that. It just keeps them nice and tidy. And so if you leave it open like this will get in your way. If you put it in your pocket or you put it in your cartridge box, this thing is always poking you. So by tucking it over in the end here, it makes it really nice and tidy. So first thing, you kind of want fingernails for this. You want to kind of just pull in the end here, so that end will come out like that. And then just grab this end and pull it like this all the way around. And then just kind of open it up. This last little bit here never really gets cut through, so there's always a little piece that kind of cracks open like that. And so that's what they look like open. And if you use partial box here, say if you shoot one or a couple rounds off and you reload, you can actually fold these back up and use the wire, just wrap the wire around like that, and then you can put that back in your pocket and it'll still stay secure in there. So that's one nice feature, and I'm pretty sure they were originally designed for that. The previous version of this box that was horizontally split was designed with that in mind. So I'd imagine, they did the same thing with these, because it works pretty good like that. And so the first step in wrapping one of these boxes is you got to put the wire, you got to attach the wire to the one half. Now both halves of these boxes have holes in them, so it doesn't matter which half. And they're very tiny little holes. If you might need a small pin or tack, kind of stick it in there and make sure that the hole is open. Sometimes there's a little burr in there and it's hard to put the wire through it. If you're using the wooden ones, I drill these with a tiny little drill bit, so they're pretty much just ready to go. And so the first step is here, you take a piece of your wire and you want to take the You want to go through the top end here, the very top hole from this side here, the side where the cartridges go. You just put it in like this, and then on the end you just bend a small loop with like maybe a 1/4 inch of wire on the end here like this, and then you want to feed that back through something like that, and then you want to pull, just gently tug on this end, and where this little piece sticks through on the other side, just bend it up so you're left with something like this. And this piece usually has a curve to it, and I like to flatten that out, so just take that and push that flat on the table like that, and it'll flatten this. And this is 28 gauge wire, so if you want to, and it's sold at most hardware stores. This is the brand. Most Ace hardware stores will carry this. It's a Hillman brand, 123119. It's 28 gauge, and there's 50 feet in here for like $5. So if you want to rewrap these, you can just go to the hardware store and buy a roll of this. It'll last you forever, just about. And so you're left with something like this. So you want to have this wire going out to this side, out to your right. And then you kind of want to push that in there and kind of bend this like that. So you'll be left with something like this. And then you want to take your cartridges and load them up in there like this. So basically the wire runs right along this first cartridge on the edge there like that, and you put your cartridges in, and then you put your second half on top like this, and then I like to kind of push down on the top here and kind of run my wire through the. Now the wire runs between the two halves, so if I tilt this up like this, you can see the wire actually goes. So it doesn't go on the outside, it actually goes between the two halves. So if I pull this apart, the wire actually will go like this. You don't want it outside, you want it between the two halves, like this. Something like that. And then kind of bend this kind of like that, and set that aside. And so the next step is you want to get your label. And so the wire side here, like I was saying, I don't know if I said this, but where your wire sticks through on the one half, this is always the label side, so the label always goes like this. You don't want to put it like this, because the original ones, if you ever look at, there's a book over here. Let me get my book. This is a book I'd recommend anybody getting that's interested in collecting these packets or making reproductions. If you look in this book, every single one of them has a little worn spot, like right here, around the number 6 on the combustible envelope here. There will be a little worn spot where the wire is worn through. So this side is always on the label side with these boxes. And so basically this little bit here should always be facing down when you glue it. And so the first step here is to just put a crease here right along the edge. This way I can kind of know where I can put it. It don't matter. They're all crooked. You see here they're offset, off center. Some are half running off the top or the bottom, so they don't have to be perfect. The original ones were not even perfect. And so to make these reusable, I'm only going to glue the 3 edges here, so it's like a U shape. like this. And so that way all the glue is on this end and this end of the packet. Because if you glue the whole thing, when you go to remove them, like this one here, see, this one here was glued on the ends. They pop right off really nice. But if you glue just the ends, you'll end up with something like this. You can reuse this. Minimum cleanup. You might have to replace. I'd replace the wire. You can probably reuse the wire if you want a couple times. But if you glue the whole thing, you will have something like this. It will be really hard to get all the paper off. Like this one was glued the whole ways, and this will be a pain in the butt to reuse and rewrap. So I'd only do this if you're making a permanent display item for a box or a display or something. So that's the only way I would glue the whole paper part. And so basically it's something like this. Just glue the edge and these small, and just glue across the top like this. And then you take your box and you line this bottom edge up with where you creased it, kind of center it up here like this, and take this edge and you want to wrap this tight. So I kind of wrap this up, kind of push the box this way, make sure your wire stays in between the two halves. And then you want to kind of press down on the box while you do this. Kind of press it like that. And by doing that, it will take the two halves and squeeze those bullets with the wax on them and hold them tight between the two halves. And that way your box doesn't rattle. And that way they're nice and tight, so if you put them in your saddlebag or you put them in your pocket and you're riding your horse or on the wagon or something like that, they're not going to be in there rattling around, breaking up. They'll be held nice and solid. The boxes even feel better when they're tightly wrapped. And the other thing too is when you shellac these, the shellac will actually shrink and make them really tight and firm, and it'll hold them in place so they don't fall apart. And so the next step here is you want to take your wire and take the end, and you want to go back into where the corner is like this and poke it through right at the corner, so you'll be something like this, and just carefully guide that through, something like that. Just gently pull on it like this. And then you want to push the short sides in first, like this. So you push them in. Something like that. And then make sure you put plenty of glue on the ends here. Because I found if you don't have enough glue on these, if you shellac them, the shellac will shrink and pop the ends open. So you can see here, this one I had to re-glue. You can see where it shrank and popped the ends off. This is one of my first packets I made, and you can see it kind of popped that end off. And so you kind of just put this like that. Take your wire across your top here, go like this. If you have any excess there, you want to trim it about 3/4 of the way across, something like this. And then you want to push this in. You always push the short sides in first, like this. and then you go like something like that, and fold them over, press them tight. And so after that's dry, you can shellac that if you want. And so that's a finished cartridge box. And so let me see here. I don't know if I have one here I can redo or not. No. So I was going to do another one, but I don't have any here right now. But I'm going to just show the other ways here you can make these boxes. They're the variations of this. And so this variation here is just the 2 halves. Like this, you put your cartridges in, put the 2 halves together, and then you have a sleeve that fits so like that. And this label is printed right on my card stock. So these are probably the simplest to make and made reusable. They're not historically correct, but they work. The other one here is you can just print instead of printing them on this paper, if you want brown labels, instead of shellacking them, you can just print them on brown craft paper and wrap them like this. So that's basically just printed and wrapped and you're done. This is a sleeve with a what I call a book style. This is a sleeved book, I call it. So there's a piece of cloth holding the 2 halves together, and there's a piece of cardboard in the middle, and then a cardstock sleeve with a label glued on it like that. And here's a 44 caliber version of this. These are made with the wood ones, and so this is a cardstock sleeve with a label wrapped around it, and then I shellacked it to get the right color. And then this is the wood wrapped in cloth or cotton muslin, I guess. And so this is a wood version of that. And so I like, these are really nice. They're reusable and they have kind of the characteristics of how the originals open, like this. You know, they kind of open like this. So I kind of like these. The only drawback with them is they really bulk up it really increases the thickness of it. So you get the height, and then the thickness is increased on them, so they're bigger and bulkier. And so that's the only disadvantage to them. And basically, to make these, what I do is I take my either wood or plastic halves here, and I just glue the cloth to them like this with wood glue with a paper sleeve. And here's one that was glued. So it's basically, you kind of take a piece of cloth, you glue one half, and you kind of stick it down, you put a strip on it, and then you put your other half down, you glue it and you put it down, and then you fold them up, and you clamp this like this till it dries. And then I usually do another coat through the fabric like this, and then after that's dry, you can go through and with a pair of scissors and just trim this excess off. And then you have to make a cardboard sleeve to go over that. And this will get rough, so instead of sanding this surface, if you take them and rub that glue in the fabric over like make a desktop or countertop, the friction will heat that glue up and make it smooth instead of sanding it. So this one here was sanded, and you can see the color. You actually sand through the fibers of the cloth and it'll weaken it. Whereas if you just rub it over from a surface, that'll soften that up and smooth it out, glass smooth, and then you make a sleeve for it. So that's about it. If you got any questions, leave them below. And if you got any other variations of how to make these, let me know. Thanks for watching.